Hey, everyone, and welcome back to our last podcast on mental health with our series that we've been doing in church, looking at the characters inside out. And we have Sarah and Miranda here from Indian Springs Counseling and Wellness to talk to us from a mental health perspective. Like we kind of said from the beginning, as pastors, we're not that. We're coming from a theological way we look at God bent, so we wanted to have your voice. And this week we're talking about sadness to joy. And we kind of put those together because I think the first movie got it just right when they put them together, and how Riley became more complete when joy allowed sadness to have the controls from time to time. And to me, that was just so powerful. Let's talk about that just for a moment. How are sadness and joy related? What are they from a mental and physical perspective?
Now I have this
Anyone?
down.
I think we're getting tired. Well, we were saying earlier that, or I was saying, I guess,
Yeah.
how fear and bravery are partners, how you can't be brave without first being afraid. And how I see joy and sadness the same way, that like having experiences of sadness or grief or loss or anything like that gives you like a broader experience of what joy really is. Like joy is almost like rooted in knowing also what sadness is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, and not to pile like metaphor on top of metaphor, but I think
It's okay. This is church. We
We
do that
love
all
metaphor.
the time.
I think it's like the darkness and light. I think that really they kind of do go hand in hand, and I think that they're both so important. And then from like a biological standpoint, like when we experience sadness, it elicits empathy from other people when we're in need. It helps them know. We have this thing called mirror neurons where my nervous system communicates with Sarah's nervous system. And so when I feel sadness, it's kind of a signal to those around me that I need compassion, I need help, I need community. And so there's a real importance to understanding it ourselves and expressing it to those around us.
Oh, that's really good. Okay. In the movie, they said sadness and joy. Would you put depression under that sadness emotion, or is it kind of envelop the others as well? That's one thing we really hadn't talked about much.
It's kind of like fear and anxiety to me, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and I think when I think about depression, I think everyone experiences sadness, and there's a really important piece of sadness in our lives. But I think when we're looking at depression, it's kind of getting stuck. So we've talked about in some of the other episodes, like a baseline kind of being where we're at a good functioning level. And anxiety is like fear that gets stuck up high, our threat response. And I feel like depression is kind of this feeling of getting really stuck. So it's more than just the feeling of sadness, but it's kind of your system being unable to kind of come back up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, one of the things that I've just kind of started thinking about recently as we've been getting ready for this series is happiness versus joy. And I think we tend to think that joy is being happy. And I'm not so sure I buy that. What are your thoughts on that?
I always considered joy to be more long-lasting, more like, I don't know, deeper.
Joy feels a little more resilient.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's a component of kind of like a self-understanding. Happiness feels like something that is just fleeting. I feel like we all want to chase happiness. That's what we think we want. But I think joy is more of an understanding of myself in the world, how I fit, and a sense of security. To me, joy feels more secure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I keep thinking about when we talk about, because we do a lot of parent coaching and talking with parents, and how we encourage our parents to make it their goal for their kids make resilience the goal instead of
Yes.
happiness, because we say we just want our kids to be happy. I want my kid to be happy. And really the goal is resilience. Like we want them to be able to experience victory and joy and happiness after or in the middle of something that's difficult. And that's I kind of see resilience and joy going hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that talk about resilience, the ability to bounce back, the ability to overcome.
Yes.
That's so good. And we like to say to our kids a lot, do whatever makes you happy. We want you to do what makes you happy. And I think that's the wrong message. There's nothing wrong with being happy.
Sure.
But, do what brings you joy. Do what fulfills your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing that, it's not always going to be happy. And I'm sure you guys feel that in your line of work with working with people. Your heart's got to break.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But yet you feel purpose and joy, I would hope.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Joy feels more complete. And I think that there's the aspect. I think you're spot on when you say the purpose. I think that happiness feels just a little bit fleeting. Like we love it. It feels great when it happens, but you can't really force it. And joy is something you can cultivate in your life through understanding yourself and your purpose and those around you so that you can have joy in the midst of difficult times. And I think that does build on resilience.
Mm-hmm. It's like joy is like a character trait, whereas happiness is a reaction.
Yes.
Or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do y'all find that people resist sadness, resist feeling that emotion?
I think they fear it.
Yeah.
Oh, fear it.
A lot of people, because we've talked about in previous episodes that we talk about how there's not good or bad feelings. There's just feelings. Or, all feelings are okay. All feelings are good and serve a purpose and are signals and things like that. But I think a lot of people, including me, resist those more negative, unpleasant feelings. And I think sadness is one of those, would you say?
Yeah. And I have something I'd say to myself and I tell my kids that just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean I'm unsafe. And so I think sometimes when we're learning to tolerate those unpleasant emotions, it's important to realize that emotions are not permanent. They come and go. And I tell some clients that it's almost like if you eat a big meal that you have to digest it. We digest emotions. And so we really have to feel them to move through them. But I think it's important to know that it won't last forever. And that's kind of where we start to notice the difference between sadness and depression. Depression is lingering. It's something you can't get through. You notice that more and more it's affecting your daily life. And so I think that's where you start to notice maybe this is a little bit more.
Sure.
And I think you can still experience joy. Like joy is a more complex feeling. Like you can experience joy even when you're going through a depression or you're going through loss. That's kind of like what you were alluding to. Whereas happiness feels more simple
and circumstantial.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was telling you guys as we were kind of in the break, one of my favorite pastors was praying, and I was listening to their service podcast, and he prayed, God, give me joy that's not dependent on outcomes. And that was such a powerful thought at the time that I heard that. Just beautiful.
Love that.
Okay. What can people do to kind of take that next step toward joy? When you're in those moments of sadness or even in a deeper place of depression, what are those steps that you can take to move out of that into joy?
I would say slow down. Because that's where we miss a lot of joy, is just moving too quickly through life. What were you thinking?
Yeah. So like not living in the moment. This is kind of corny, but I think it's helpful and it sticks a little bit. We talk a lot in the field about trauma and trauma triggers. And so a trigger is something that like will bring you back to that place of hurt and overwhelm. The opposite of a trauma trigger is a glimmer. And a glimmer is feelings in your day where you feel the sun on your skin, or you hear your baby laughing, or you're snuggling with your dog. And I think that slowing down in your day-to-day to enjoy those moments and really be fully present in the now is really big. Even when you're in a moment of depression or you're struggling with your mental health, like there are still moments of good in your day. And I think slowing down and fully embracing those is big, and we train our brain to look for them. So when we notice glimmers, kind of does the opposite, and it helps us like direct our brain towards a more positive path. Because when we've been through hard things or we're depressed, then we filter for the negative and we look for threats. And so sometimes we have to work on training our brain to notice that there is still good in the world.
And the hard reality is, if we're disconnecting from those more unpleasant feelings like sadness, we're also going to be inevitably disconnecting from things like joy. So part of being human is being able to feel all of them, and maybe even both at the same time. And that feels scary to people, but that's what we have to do, is be able to tolerate and feel the depth of our sadness or anger or fear. And then that gives us more room to also feel the more positive or positive.
Yeah. And
Positive
the
feelings.
complexity of emotion. So that's something we talk a lot about in therapy too, is that two seemingly opposing things can exist at the same time. So you can have joy in the middle of a really tough season. And I think sometimes people like to be all or nothing, but life is more complex than that.
Yeah. Glimmer. I've never heard that before. and I love that. There's a time of the year in the fall where if the sun's if the day's a certain brightness and the temperature's just right, that there's this feeling that comes over me from my childhood of just, and it's like that moment a couple times of fall. It's just such peace. Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely a glimmer for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. And kind of springboard off, you started off, Sarah, by saying to rest or to
slow down.
And I think it's important, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, that maybe not move so fast out of a sadness experience.
Yes.
Let you feel it, is that?
Yeah. Digest it.
Yeah.
So you really want to move through it. And sometimes that might look like actually moving. So like if you're going through a really tough time, a time of grief or depression, that might look like going on walks with a friend, or, actually our body processes emotion through movement too. So I think that slowing down and really feeling it, sometimes like listening to that music that makes you sad, and like crying is a way for your body to express those feelings. And it's important. It sometimes can feel scary. People feel like they'll be stuck in it. But oftentimes when we feel it, then we can heal it and move through it.
That's awesome. Brings me back to when I was a kid, and after a good cry as a kid, you felt so good.
Yes.
Yeah. So. Well, thank you both for your time during this season we're talking about mental health at Asbury, and we thank you and pray for you guys as you're working with people in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Glad to have you.